Today on Built to Last, a river runs through it.
Dive crews are installing underwater features for the marine habitats.
You gotta keep your eyes on that level.
Straight lines are nice and easy.
And coming together in Chinatown.
Now it's fun.
Put your seat backs in the upright position. It's time for Built to Last.
Built to Last is brought to you by the Chicago Regional Council of Carpenters Labor and Management Committee and Simpson Strong Tie.
Welcome to Built to Last. I'm Monica Peterson.
And I'm Mark Nilsson. Public libraries are a great place to unlock your imagination. But did you know they also serve as anchors for their communities? Well, visit an award winner that not only serves, but delights.
And do you know anyone who likes flying these days?
Not one person.
No. Well, the folks who run O'Hare Airport feel your pain, and they're changing the way you navigate one of the world's busiest airports.
Well, Monica, call me old-fashioned, but I prefer something a little slower, like a trip down a river.
The city of Chicago is known for many architectural projects and engineering projects that have been monumental. And the Carpenters Union has been involved in all of those since the beginning of the 19th century.
From the shores of Lake Michigan, it snakes its way through the canyons of stone and steel. It's a natural wonder, a modern marvel. And because of its current grandeur, it's easy to forget that the Chicago River was born from humble beginnings.
So years ago, the Chicago River was a meandering stream. The reason the city of Chicago exists is because the original settlers traded with the Native Americans and with the people coming to this country.
Before the railroads, water was the most effective way of moving people and goods, and Chicago's location was perfect, except
it's in the middle of the country, of course, so it's strategically important to the new American nation. But the bottom line is that you've got access to the Great Lakes from the East Coast. It's just not connected to the Mississippi River. There are multiple rivers that are flowing that direction, and the idea would be to connect those river systems to the Mississippi River systems. However, there's a watershed just west of Chicago. So traditionally, people would have to portage from the Chicago River systems into what would be the Mississippi River systems.
work began on a canal to connect Chicago to the Mississippi in 1832. And in 1848, the 96-mile Illinois and Michigan Canal was completed, and Chicago took off.
So in the 19th century and the early 20th century, the river is an industrial site. It's a place where the commerce of Chicago happens. Chicago, you have to remember, is a place where raw materials are being brought into the city, they're being transformed into goods, and then shipped back out, whether they're on boats or on rails eventually. That commerce, that process that's happening in Chicago of lumber coming into the city, other goods coming into the city that then are being transformed into furniture and meat and hides for leather goods. All of that's happening in Chicago. And this is all not just happening in the city, but so much of it is right on the river.
And in those days, people weren't as sensitive to the environment, and there was a lot of pollution that took place and really made the Chicago River pretty gross.
The river at that time flowed out into Lake Michigan, which is where the intake valves were for the fresh water. So the filth that went from the river into the lake then, of course, came back and wound up in the drinking water for the residents.
In 1889, Illinois created the Sanitary District of Chicago, today known as the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District, in order to safeguard the city's water supply. One of their early projects was among the greatest engineering feats in history, the reversal of the Chicago River. It took over 8,500 workers 8 years to complete. But when they were finished, sewage no longer flowed into the lake, but down the Des Plaines River and eventually into the Mississippi.
Public health improves tremendously after they reverse the river. So we have a fresh water system in the lake, people are getting fresh water. The river also, while it's not clean, it doesn't smell anything like it did before. So the city is a more livable place, it's a more appealing place, it's a more attractive place. So Chicago really starts to fulfill the promise that people saw back in the 17th century about what could happen here.
Enter architect Daniel Burnham. After his triumph of the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, he set his sights on a larger canvas.
The Chicago Riverwalk idea came from the 1909 Daniel Burnham plan of the city of Chicago. It was originally part of his idea to have Wacker Drive be a double-decker roadway so that the lower level would be used for loading docks, your garbage, not so pleasant things.
And the idea here was that it would be a way to really modernize the city. It would be a main thoroughfare where before it had been really a commercial area.
Work on East Wacker Drive was completed in 1926.
They brought that street up and made it a boulevard for the city and connected that to the other major boulevards that really defined the city as it moved forward into the 20th century. By the middle part of the 20th century, Chicago is a commercial juggernaut. It's producing and shipping goods all over the country, all over the world. But beginning in the 1950s and into the 1960s, you really begin to see a drop-off in population. There's a flight to the suburbs after World War II, and the city's trying to figure out what to do about that.
And some people look towards the river.
Marina City sort of represents the beginning of an effort made in Chicago to bring people back into the city, less about commercial entities and businesses and industries along the river, and more about recreation, more about the river being seen as an asset of a different kind.
And one of the river's champions was Mayor Richard J. Daley.
You see the sun coming up and you're fishing, and then you look and see the beautiful skyline of Chicago. There's so much for nothing in this life if we appreciate it. And there's nothing as wholesome as a fish.
So in the 1990s, the Department of Transportation rebuilt East-West Wacker Drive. And as part of that project, the intention was that we would reclaim as much space along the river as we could for pedestrian uses as opposed to parking or garbage pickup. Previously, you were able to come down the Lakefront Trail, down the Riverwalk, but at Michigan Avenue you would stop and you'd have to walk up the stairs and cross the street. So working with the Army Corps of Engineers, the Illinois Department of Natural Resources, the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago, and of course our waterway users, it was decided that we could build out 25 feet between each bridge and 20 feet underneath each bridge. And at the section of the river called Wolf Point, the confluence of the river, we were allowed a 50-foot build-out limit.
Wolf Point, once the epicenter for commerce on the Chicago River, is now symbolic of the waterway's rebirth. But just like a century ago, when Chicagoans reversed the river, the water isn't so easy to tame.
Carpenters were also used as divers, and they did all the underwater connections, all the welding of the seawall.
At Armstrong Ceiling and Wall Solutions, we take great pride in making a positive difference in the lives of people. With the broadest portfolio in the industry and the technical performance to back it up, you can design and install with confidence. Our ceiling construction expertise, training, and pre-engineered ceiling solutions make it easy for you to seamlessly transition from one end of the building to the other. Improve construction efficiencies and keep every job on time, on budget, and on the mark with Armstrong Ceiling and Wall Solutions. Faster, easier, better.
Keeping restaurants and hotels up to date with the latest design trends is a constant challenge. Finding qualified contractors isn't at finishingchicago.com. We work with top designers and general contractors who use the latest painting, drywall finishing, and wall covering techniques in Chicagoland's premier hotels and restaurants. The hospitality industry relies on finishingchicago.com as its free resource to find quality finishing contractors. For a great finish, start with finishingchicago.com.
Daniel Burnham made no small plans. Now it was up to the carpenters to execute them.
The process of building land and water is pretty tricky. It's funny too, I have this old historic photo of the guys working on the Quincy Bridge when it was under construction. And the trades guys there are wearing fedora hats, church shoes, regular clothes. And then you look at the guys today and they've got the steel-toed boots, they've got their fire retardant gear, they've got the hard hats, they've got their life jackets.
I'm the project manager out here. So I deal with the finances of the job, making sure we start on time and finish on September 21st when the owners dictated we need to be done.
The biggest challenge in constructing the Chicago Riverwalk has been having to do a lot of the work from the waterway. The Carpenters Union was involved in the construction of the Riverwalk by driving the sheeting, which allowed the new wall limit of the expansion of the project into the waterway.
As part of this Riverwalk project, we've moved the existing Wakefield wall out 20 feet. This room right here behind us is a little bit different. We actually were able to move it out 45 feet. So we've created acres of land for people to enjoy. We had up to as many as 3 pile driver crews out here. They're installing drilled shafts.
Carpenters were also used as divers, and they did all the underwater connections, all the welding of the seawall.
Also, dive crews are helping with form work.
Pushing the bottom, then you gotta keep your eyes on that level.
Installing underwater features for the marine habitats.
Yeah, I got to re-rig it.
An additional 20,000 square feet of land has been built as a result of the carpenters' hard work.
I think you can count on the Carpenters Union to do really good, solid work. They know the importance of quality.
We bring expertise, we bring skills, they bring professional craftsmen to make this project a success. I'll be able to bring my grandkids out to this section of the city and say, you know, I built this.
My wife and I have really gotten into walking, and so we walk Chicago all the time. So we've been going up and down Wacker for months, and we're like, oh, what's going on over there?
I've been watching the development as it's been happening. It's been pretty exciting.
We opened the Phase 2 section of the Riverwalk, and Phase 2 is State Street to LaSalle Street. And that opened in June of 2015.
It's really a destination, a place you would go to see the city, to experience the city, to understand the city.
When we started design of the section of Riverwalk west from State Street, we decided to do is use all these beautiful bridges as kind of an Alice in Wonderland type experience.
Each city block has its own theme. First block all the way down at the east end at State Street was the marina, right in front of the Marina Towers. Next block was the Cove.
The Cove is a section of the Riverwalk between Dearborn and Clark Street, and this slopes down like a dune. It's a lot more natural.
Followed by the River Theater right there at State Street.
It is a series of steps that bring you down from Upper Wacker Drive to the water level. The Water Plaza is another great plaza space.
I mean, you've got the water that shoots out of the ground. You have these wonderful benches that are made of wood. They're actually angled so that you can talk to people.
And the jetty's actually constructed different than the other parts of the Riverwalk. We're actually putting everything on piers. And so you'll be able to come out and do some fishing and actually enjoy the river as a natural resource.
We're standing at the last block of the current phase of the project, which is room 6. This here is going to be a grassy area with a switchback ramp on this end.
I think the Riverwalk project is important to Chicago because it really brings people down to the waterway.
And you already see it happening with the folks who are rowing and what's going on with the sculling crews. The way I use it, all of that is making it a lot more dynamic.
Being able to walk all the way from the center of the city where you've got the real hustle and bustle further down the river all the way out to the lake was really interesting, and it's a really good vantage point.
Some of the great moments of architectural design in Chicago, the Tribune Tower, the Wrigley Building, on the river. The river is this place where you showcase the best of Chicago.
We have restaurants and shops and people playing music, and it's a whole nother dimension to the city that otherwise wasn't here.
And we have these little pockets for retail, so you can stop and have a gelato, or you could stop and have a glass of wine. You could stop and have a hamburger.
The thing I like about this is an investment that has a return on investment, because as you build this out, you're going to get more tourism, you're going to get more restaurants down here, and it's one of those trade-offs where 30, 40 years from now, this is going to grow.
I like that it shows the buildings. My brother ran around crazy, and he took his shoes off.
As a taxpayer, I love to see money spent this way.
I think projects like this definitely encourage people to come and visit cities. They encourage tourism, and they give people a different view and a different perspective of the city they're in, I think.
I'm not sure if it's because you're close to the water or if it's being in this canyon of skyscrapers. It's just something kind of magical.
It's the heart and soul of the city.
The first permanent settler along the banks of the Chicago River was Jean-Baptiste Dusable, around 1779.
Drop a pebble into Chicago's Chinatown and watch a community come together.
You're very proud of the work that you do when you're working out in the field. You'll tell your children about it.
I built that building. My son knows all the buildings where I build.
The final product is really a good feeling to see that you were a part of it.
When I walk around the city, I can point my finger and be like, I built that.
The mayor has been talking about this recently, about the importance of recognizing how great architecture can impact a community. Think of schools and libraries and police stations. That is the identity of the community.
Historically in Chicago, new libraries, we used what's called a prototype model, where we designed a building once with a few different modules and then sort of replicated that building many times across the city. In this particular library, that wasn't possible.
The site was challenging. It's a tight site to build on.
We have elevated train tracks on one side. We have busy intersection on the other.
So we saw it as an opportunity to not just sort of recreate the prototype in a triangular form, but actually see if there was a way to think more creatively.
Straight lines are nice and easy. 90 degrees is a nice and easy building for the carpenter to build, but it just kind of blends in. It's like vanilla.
We, as an alternative approach, elected to bring on a design builder.
White & Company actually has been doing design build work for over 20 years. So we reached out to Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, a friend of mine, Brian Lee.
You know, Brian, he leads the architecture practice at SOM Chicago. He and his team are building massive multi-million-dollar skyscrapers all over the world. And he put the same energy, creativity for this tiny little 16,000 square foot library.
It's curves. Now it's a challenge. Now it's fun.
And it had to meet the city's new standards of going green.
The first thing that I experienced with this building is the beauty of the space, and I think that the built environment often gets sort of second attention.
My favorite feature happens to be the most complicated feature, and that has to do with the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing systems. It's a large volume space, a lot of open space.
What the architects did is they actually built the radiant heat into the ceiling, and if you look at it, you think it's actually a screen.
We used a radiant ceiling mat, which pumps hot and cold water into the heat and cool the space, but typically you put ceilings underneath it. Here we put it on display.
We have, as you look, essentially it's a glass building, but with these fins, so it helps us manage light and lighting controls.
And the fins actually change in dimension and spacing, and that's in the reflection of where the sun angles as it moves around the building.
The fact that we can sit, on a cloudy day and most of the light in the space that we're sitting in now comes from the outdoors. Not only is that like smart from managing, the cost of the building, it also makes a really beautiful space that people want to be in. We have a green roof, and what's so great about our green roof is you can see it from the CTA station as you're getting off.
But typically you're on the flat surface and you can't see them unless you're in a tall building. And here the roof is domed, so if you stand back in the street, it actually puts it on display. When you come in and you walk up that stair, and the idea how it moves you around the space, there's never one angle.
Look at the stairs. They're not straight. They're curved. It's the fun of doing the different looks, the different angles, the radiuses.
They use Chinese feng shui, so that all parts of the library collect to the central.
Brian Lee talks about this being shaped as a pebble, and you drop it in a pond and it kind of radiates out towards the community.
So when you just walk in the building, you just feel happy and feel energized.
So you can measure success in different ways. Number one, was the project delivered on time? Was it delivered in accordance with the project specifications? But bigger than that is the community using it? Does it provide access to those children and those community residents that otherwise wouldn't have access to things such as air conditioning, heating, internet access, meeting spaces, community gathering spaces, social events, those things that galvanize communities?
Every day we have so many people waiting for us to open the door for them.
If you're here in the early parts of the day, you'll see the children's room overrun with kids. There's a digital media lab that's for teenagers. So if you're here after school, you'll see a group of teenagers who are playing video games or working with a 3D printer.
The computers are being used. There are kids on the floor reading. There are people reading to the kids. Their parents are there with them. They're not watching TV. They're not out playing around. They're not getting into trouble.
Any carpenter, any tradesman that works on a building takes pride in what they did, and when they see that it's being used and utilized the way it's supposed to be, and that people are flocking to this building to use it, that's great. You may not have designed it, you may not have brought the people in, but you built this thing.
Its orientation at Archer Wentworth invites you in. And once you're in, you don't want to leave.
As you walk around the building, you're always looking and moving and looking at different perspectives. At nighttime, you have to come by at night.
You see that building light up at night, you start to realize, wow, this is special.
Never thought in such a short period of time it would have won so many awards.
You know, many of the things that this building has been acknowledged for is just smart design, and smart design that directly relates to how we provide strong service.
When you put thoughtfulness into a project like this, and it has great outcomes.
The fact that this small building of 16,000 square feet can actually serve all these various different needs in this sort of symbiotic way, that, that those things can be happening in parallel, to me, sort of the cumulative effect is like, wow, this is a public space, this is a public building that's working.
Runway 10 Center, 28 Center had to be built in several pieces. We had a large detention basin, the Union Pacific Railroad, a cemetery.
Stabila, for over 125 years, has led the industry in measuring and leveling. Still manufactured in Germany since 1865, tradesmen rely on Stabila every day for its precision and durability. We continue to revolutionize the way we build with our lasers, levels, and laser distance measuring tools on commercial and residential job sites around the world. Stabila, how true pros measure.
Meet the new family of Blaze laser measures from Bosch. Go ahead, turn it on and start measuring. It's that simple. The Blaze family offers a wide range of functions to tackle any measuring job. Extend your reach with accuracy up to a 1/16 of an inch. With Bluetooth-enabled devices, easily transfer measurements to your smartphone or tablet with free Bosch apps. Reach farther, work faster, and stay accurate with the Bosch Blaze family of laser measures. Measure on.
Let's be honest, getting there should be half the fun, and the Chicago Department of Aviation is doing all they can to make it so. O'Hare International Airport in Chicago, Illinois is practically a city unto itself, a country in fact. The 77 million visitors who pass through its doors each year are equal to the combined population of Canada and Australia, with New York City thrown in for good measure. With a facility this vast and complicated, there are bound to be challenges. Thankfully, a talented team of government officials, private industry, and skilled tradesmen and women came together to undertake the largest construction project in the United States.
The O'Hare Modernization Program was planned in 2001, and it was part of O'Hare's overall master plan. And at that time, O'Hare was one of the most delayed airports in the country.
My experience of flying out of O'Hare, you know, I would say O'Hare is well known for any kind of delay in the system would then just create a ripple effect. If I've got a 5-hour drive, I'll drive rather than fly.
So how do you get more people off the road and into the air? The first step, making sure you can accommodate them.
O'Hare had 7 runways, which were a series of intersecting runways. We've set out to build 6 parallel east-west runways and keep 2 crossfield runways.
The O'Hare Modernization Program is anticipated to create $18 billion in economic impact for the city of Chicago and the region at large, and could create 195,000 jobs. Working on an active airfield is fraught with danger, but the skilled carpenters on the job ensure the safety remains a priority while the project rolls on.
The coolest project I've ever worked on, you know, I gotta say, it's probably this project.
Runways are designed strictly to FAA standards and guidelines. Almost 4 feet of material goes into making a runway. New runway 10 center, 28 center had to be built in several pieces due to infrastructure that was in the way. We had a large detention basin, the Union Pacific Railroad, a cemetery, 2 cargo buildings. To date, we've delivered 3 new runways, 2 new air traffic control towers, and miles of taxiways.
I do fly out of O'Hare quite often, and while definitely I have seen improvements over the last couple years, there's certainly room for improvement.
The biggest hassle is still getting in and out.
But the carpenters are already in the process of building a facility that will make getting in and out of O'Hare a breeze.
What we're doing right here is a train station, bus station, customer service center, and public parking. The first 3 floors are for all the rental car agencies here at O'Hare. So at the terminal, you won't have any bus traffic. It'll clear congestion within that circle at the terminals itself.
Passengers won't have to brave the elements and can wait on a heated train platform after getting their luggage. Next, they'll be whisked away to the multimodal facility where they can enjoy some refreshments in the beautiful new lobby before picking up their rental car.
Very challenging project. This is a train station. We don't get to build an elevated train station very often.
The current system will need to be extended 2,000 feet to the north.
The goal is to commission the facility in November 2018. The train is following a little bit behind in 2019.
If getting in and out of O'Hare to grab a flight, get home was easier and quicker than I do now, I would definitely fly more.
When I land, I just want to get home to my daughter who's been waiting for me.
The guys do take pride in their work. One craft knows and understands that he's there for the next man to come and take in and do his part, so it's a good feeling up here. And this being such a monument project, they're gonna want to be proud to drive by and say, hey, I had a hand in doing it.
That's all for this episode of Built to Last.
Monica, you know what carpenters and an airport have in common?
What?
Planes.
We'll see you next time. That's not funny.
Planes.
It's not funny. Thank you for watching.